All right, welcome to another episode of the Radical Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Zeke Freeman. Today, I am super excited to be having a conversation with Enoch Sears. He has been a longtime mentor and advocate for building great, thriving architectural businesses. And we talk a lot on this show about building and investing in real estate. And I'm a huge advocate of also having active income if you're going to be investing in real estate that is involved in the real estate world. For us, that's meant building an architecture practice that is thriving and a real estate practice as well. Enoch is really the expert in this area, in my mind, leading other architects to get beyond being the solopreneur to build thriving practices. He has founded the Business of Architecture and the Marketing Institute, where he's coached firm owners on how to stop feeling overworked and underpaid. I've been in that spot. Really focuses on this idea, he calls the SMART practice method. We're going to dive into that a little bit. That helps build firms that are profitable, fulfilling, and really just looks at this overall cycle of success. Welcome, Enoch. Super excited to have you on today. So thanks for being here.
Zeke, dude, it is my pleasure to be here, man. As you were giving this little intro, I was remembering when we had that AI conference in Denver. Or was it, I don't know if it was a conference, but I was out there for some reason, and you and we hooked up. I went over to the office that you had way back in the day. It must have been like 10 years ago, and you took me around to see some of your developments, and dude, it's like bringing back old memories.
It is. It's been a long time. It's really good to do full circle. And that time when you came to our office, we were pretty early launching Root Architecture. I was trying to figure out how to bring in clients. Like your first big thing as a firm owner or business owner is how to bring people in the door. And it's probably one of your early guys that hopped in on Business of Architecture and started learning, going from the practitioner of working as an architect underneath firms to actually becoming a business owner. And the work that you've done really helps architects understand that mindset. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do with Business of Architecture and how that got started.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I started an architecture firm at least 2 times in the past. And one thing that I find in common with architecture firm owners is that we usually, if we're starting our own practice, we start it because we want something better or more than what we have right now. So for architects who start their own practice, that they might get to a glass ceiling, they might feel like there's not enough opportunity in the practice where they're working. They might like the appeal of the freedom of being able to chart their own schedule, take off to the middle of the day to go to the kids' soccer games, like all the benefits that supposedly come with having a business. However, if we're not taking over an established practice, when we try to start up something from scratch, what we don't realize is there's systems that need to happen, there's processes that need to happen, there's specific ways to be able to persuade other people to give you their hard-earned money in exchange for the value that you provide them. And they don't teach any of this in architecture school. So for many small firm architects, which we define as anywhere from 0 to 20 team members, 20 would be on the larger side of that, when they actually get into running a practice, they find that more often than not, they're overwhelmed, they're underpaid, they feel like they're working too hard for the money they're making, they're sacrificing their desire. They're actually not doing as much architecture, doing a lot of admin, and they're just asleep to the idea that there's a different way to do it. So they go years and years making these trade-offs, losing their health, dealing with, a couple of years ago, I had one of the practice owners came to us. He's like in his mid-40s. He's our age, Zeke, and he was on high blood pressure medication. And this is not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
The stress of dealing with the deadlines, the stress of dealing with team members, the stress of dealing with proposals coming in and the ups and downs in workflow, being able to manage all that without completely going absolutely certifiably insane it's a lot. So that realization for me was the genesis of our consulting company, Business of Architecture. We have a team of experts in everything from positioning to marketing architectural practices to HR to finances and operations. But that came because I realized that my problem wasn't that I didn't know how to be an architect. My problem was that I had no clue how to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the conversation we're going to get in today, is like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah. What do you see as the the biggest mistakes that a lot of first-time business owner, architects, solopreneurs are making as they're stepping in and starting their business?
Yeah, I would say, and this is one that I made myself, it's just waiting to get help, waiting to get help. Because what I didn't realize is that a simple amount, like with a little bit of training, you can go with someone, you can go from an architect who's struggling to communicate value to an architect who's landing high dollar contracts because you know how to present what you do. And I didn't realize that there's systems, there's frameworks for this, there's psychology. I didn't really understand any of that. So what I find is that even architects that come in and get help from us, oftentimes it's 3, 4, 5, or 6 years down the road, and these people are earning maybe pushing six figures, 100,000. We had an architect just yesterday on one of our group calls, and he made this funny joke. He said, you know what? He was reviewing his employee salaries, and it was like, and he called me out. He said, Enoch, do you remember back in the day when like $100,000 was a lot of money? And I was like, I do. Becoming six-figure architect or becoming like six figures, I was like, wow, you made it. Today, especially if you live in a large city, it just doesn't go as far. And so getting by on $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 as an architect, if you're solo, is just, it's a shame. It doesn't need to be that way. So I think that ultimately the biggest mistake, Zeke, is that we sell ourselves short. We just sell ourselves short. We sell our potential short. We settle for something that we think is great when it's not that great compared to what it could be. That's the biggest.
Yeah.
I think that's number one.
And I find a lot of that's mindset, right? It's just being willing to put yourself out, say, I'm worth this, and asking for it. You never get what you don't ask for. What do you see as some of the biggest mindset shifts that have to happen for owners?
Yeah, I thought you said mindset shit there for a second. I was like, there's a lot of mindset shit, you know?
It might.
I'm like, yeah. We all have it. We all have it. Like you said, number one is value, like charging ultimately. Like here's the way a lot of what I found architects, the way that they perceive their value, the way that they decide what to charge is they think about what are people willing to pay? That's in their minds. That's how they position. Ultimately, they think when they look at the hourly rate or something, they might compare it with other architecture firms. But in the back of their head, there's this question, what are people willing to pay? What is the market charging out there? And I think that's completely the wrong way to do it, right? Because Henry Ford, when he came up with his new and improved assembly line for creating cars, he didn't go out there and he didn't try to look at how to make horses faster. There's that famous quote, if people would have asked me what they wanted, they would have said, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. So I think a lot of times as architects, when we go into business, we're just looking to create faster horses. In other words, we look at the other architectural practices around us. We look at what they're charging. We look at how they're delivering their services. And this could apply to developers. It could apply to your hospitality clients that are listening as well. We're looking at everyone else and then say, okay, cool. As long as I'm doing what they're doing, then I'm good. But what that does, it excludes the possibility of doing something much better than what other people are doing. So architects traditionally, they think about how much they charge in terms of what they think people are willing to pay, as opposed to figuring out what are my expenses, how much money do I feel like I want to make that's reasonable for my industry, and then how much profit do I want to make on top of that. And what I would suggest is in the United States, an architect who's a sole practitioner shouldn't be bringing home any less than $150,000. That's before taxes. That would be about the same they would be earning if they were working at another firm in the same capacity. So this is like the bare minimum. It's like if you're not earning this, go get a job at Taco Bell or something. $150,000 and 20% profit on top of that. So ultimately, I would think that an architect who's running their own practice, they should be taking home a minimum of $200,000. That's going to vary from city to city in the US, but that's like a good benchmark. If you're not taking home $200,000 before taxes, then there's some real structural problems with the way that you are structuring your fees, the way that you're structuring your practice, because ultimately it always shows up in the money and the measurables.
Yeah. I know you teach this framework of smart practice. Talk to me about that a little bit. What is outlined in smart practice as this systemized way of starting to build that 200 plus take home for practitioners?
Absolutely. So what I discovered as I started to really dive in and try to figure out this thing called quote unquote business, I went outside of the architecture industry. I joined masterminds. I hired consultants. I hired mentors. I went outside the traditional university school system to figure out what is business and what are other industries using that allow them to create a profitable business, a profitable venture. And as I begin to understand these different tools and techniques from other industries, I begin to understand that there's so many things that go into having and running a successful business that it can be very difficult for the human mind just to conceptualize it in terms of a framework. So what smart practice is we took all these principles about running a business, all these skill sets, all these disciplines, all these systems and processes that go into running a business, create a framework around it, basically categorize things in certain categories, and I'll explain what those categories are so that people could instantly understand, okay, this is my business on a piece of paper. These are the things that I need to have in place to have this thing running smoothly, right? So in smart practice, we divide a successful business up into 4 concrete categories, okay? Number 1, we call psychology or performance. This is all about the mindset. This is about our personal vision, our goals, where we're headed as people, how we get that vision and mission onto the team. It's like what's going on in the head of our team members and ourselves. It's pivotal, right? Psychology. What's the psychology of our team? What's our own personal psychology? That's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is what we call people. It's the people pillar. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, but it's like, how do you hire people? How do you onboard people? How do you train them? How do you recognize who are the right people for the roles that you need? So many times it's easy, and we see business owners, architects hiring people, but completely getting the role wrong. They don't really understand really how to get that right fit between the person that they actually, let's put it this way, the role that they need, the things they need to have done, and the personality out there in the world who's going to come in and get those things done. So number 1, psychology. Number 2 is people. Number 3 is process. A business, so you're not going to go anywhere without process. And when we look at processes, we break that down into 3 main areas. Number 1, how do you get the work? Number 2, how do you do the work? And number 3, how do you support the work? So in terms of what you do, investing, hospitality, we could say, look, for an investor, it's the same business model, right? If you're developing, you need to be able to bring in the money. How are you bringing in the funds to fund your developments? That's bringing it in. How you then pull off the development, go through all those hoops to actually hire the architects and get the plans drawn and get the thing, all the approvals that you need, the entitlements, and then get that thing built and then occupied and then sold, or whatever your model is. That's doing the work. And then the third part is supporting the work. This is on the admin side. This is all that stuff that the accountants and bookkeepers absolutely love, the office managers love, which is making sure that all the numbers are in the spreadsheets and making sure that emails get responded to adequately and everyone gets paid on time. That's an administration that needs to happen. The last area, or the last pillar, as we call it in smart practice, Zeke, is what we call profit. So it's everything that needs to happen in a business to allow there to be a profit. Because if a business doesn't have a profit, it's going to be susceptible to falling over with the next wind that blows by. This little house of cards will collapse. And so when we look at profit, we're looking at things like setting goals. We talk about perspective, right? Being able to plan out, okay, what do I need to do? Where's my business headed? Understanding the lay of the land. We're talking about things like tracking financial metrics, key financial metrics. How much are you paying people? What profit margins are you shooting for? The list goes on and on. To keep it simple, 4 basic pillars of smart practice: psychology, process, people, and profit. And if you just focus on these 4 areas, and we teach architects a framework, we show them specific systems and processes in each of these areas that are simple to implement. But if you just take care of those 4 areas, then you can have a reasonably successful practice without killing yourself. And if you're above average, you can have a fantastic practice without killing yourself.
So I'm interested. I know you help and work with a lot of architects, and I imagine that 200,000. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Is probably that going from the 0 to $1 million kind of mark of gross income. And I think if you can do good sales and marketing, and I learned to do that with architecture and marketing, you can get up to that relatively easy. The group that's going from $1 million to 10 million, what do you think is the leap that has to happen to get over that glass ceiling?
Fantastic question, spoken like a man who's been there himself.
Just curious, asking for a friend.
Yeah, exactly. I love this question. It's a great one. And most small practices, just for everyone out there listening, most small practices stop below $1 million, like the vast majority. So what Zeke is asking here is a very pertinent question, because most architects, number 1, They don't know how to get past 1 million or 1.5 million or even 2 million. Don't have a clue. Number two, it terrifies them because here's one of the big problems, Zeke, that I find that keeps architects from being able to grow to the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 million is they think, damn, it's so freaking hard for me to sit here at 1.5 or 1 million or whatever they're doing where their hair's on fire, they're managing everything, they're like, they got their fingers in everything. They're like, getting the business beyond to more seems like more stress, more.
There's a max capacity as the master puppeteer when you have a team
Exactly.
of, you said 0 to 20, and I'm guessing that ratio is what I found is one principal to about 10 team members. And it's about what you can handle. And I imagine going from 10 to 20, I would guess is 2 principals, and they're just splitting it off. At least that's how it's ended up en route. And so you're creating these little hubs. And at some point, okay, we could continue to scale that, add more principals, but does that actually add much to the founder's bottom line? Is there a diminishing return? Is it, for us, we've looked at, okay, this is good. Let's go into real estate, invest some profit after that. Or is it worth it to keep pushing up the hill and get to the Genslers levels and the Tom Kudniks and bigger firm scale? Is it adding that much to the bottom line of the founders?
A great question. Look, if we're looking at specifically from a monetary financial, the answer would be absolutely yes, but it depends on everything. It's very situational, right? Getting a strictly residential practice to $10 million is a huge feat because with the nature of residential practice, you're typically working with one-off projects and one-off clients, which means that you're just on this constant marketing hamster wheel of looking for the next project. Now, if you have access to another project type, like maybe some school districts or some hospital work, those practices, it's going to be a lot easier to get to the $10 million mark if you're dealing with institutional clients, because typically they don't want to have to hire new architects for every job. They want to find a firm or 2 firms that they like working with, and they'll keep on feeding you work. And so then it's a matter of adding a few more of those clients over time to be able to increase your revenue. The other key here is that, the project type is key. The other thing here is that you have to manage you just have to manage the finances, right? And there's a quote by Gary Keller, who was, all your real estate listeners will obviously know who Gary Keller is, co-founder of Keller Williams Real Estate. I really like his philosophies, and he said something once that really stuck with me. He said, my business philosophy was always this: I wanted to make my world so big that everyone within my organization could build out their own world within it. Okay. This is not the attitude of many business owners. They are scared of competition. They're scared of being outshone by their employees. They're scared of giving away control because they fear being stabbed in the back or having control wrested out of their hands or having something go south with someone that basically they don't trust. Gary Keller had the completely opposite. He's, hey, look, identify the right person. And if you have the right person, you can trust that person. And then what does it start to look like when you're just coaching them and providing the vision? And that person is then growing underneath the umbrella that you've created. So that right there, Zeke, figure out how to do that or implement that. That is how someone grows from 3 million to 10 million, which is you're no longer pushing it forward. Like a single person, what I found is like a single founder can push the business to about 3 million maximum. Okay. But beyond 3 million, the only way you're going to get past 3 million is if you have highly lucrative projects. So there are a few people out there that do that kind of work and they have the team of 10 and they're just pulling in really highly profitable projects. That's a rare thing. The other way is that you've actually empowered people and you have other people pulling the business forward. And that's a beautiful place to be in, because when you as the owner can then start to relax, inspire other people want to come in, they're motivated. A lot of people, especially younger, who may be younger than the owners, they want to make their mark. They want to increase their salary. You're hungry. I know back in the day, you're still hungry, but even back in the day, I'm sure at your firms, you were that hungry guy that was like chomping at the bit, wanting more opportunity, wanting more ability to contribute to the firm. My guess is, I don't even know, we haven't talked about this. My guess is that the owners you were working with, there was no room there for you to grow. And so you bailed and you started your own thing. Do I have it wrong?
Oh, you're right on. It was either spend the next 10 years climbing up a ladder of somebody else's ladder, or let's just take our own ladder, put it on our own wall. I love that you brought up Gary Keller and I've looked a lot at the real estate business model. because my wife's in real estate at Root Team. You'll go on our website. We have architecture in real estate. She's beginning to build out her brokerage. Same, we've been building out the architecture brokerage. And one of the things I like about the real estate model versus the architecture model is they're purely commission based. You eat what you kill. As a broker, you bring on other realtors and you're overseeing them, you're managing them, and you're empowering them to go out and get work and bring in new clients. It's a little different in the architecture model where typically you have one rainmaker going and getting projects, handing it out to other architects. And we begin, as we've brought on another principal, setting up that real estate model of kind of commission-based architecture. One of the things that's glass ceiling that we're approaching on is this liability that happens as an architect. As the principal architect of record, you're really responsible for everything that goes out the door. And that becomes really tricky on growing more projects, adding more people. That's a little different than a real estate brokerage where the liability actually falls onto the realtor. They each carry their own insurances and the broker is just an oversight. Architecture, everything coming out the door really belongs to whoever's stamp or seal on it. How are you seeing architects that are growing, getting past that model and doing more work, but minimizing their liability? Any thoughts or patterns or models that you see out there?
The best one I've seen is just they hire people they trust. Or they hire qualified people for the task. Like when they're hiring, they're not looking at who's the cheapest person I can hire, what's the littlest I can afford to throw at this position. They're looking at, no, as a matter of fact, I want to be on the high end of compensation here. And then they thoroughly vet the people they bring on to make sure that they're qualified. How many horror stories do we hear about firm owners who bring people on who represented that they knew how to do X, Y, and Z? Within the first month, it's clear that they do not know how to do that. Yeah. There was a firm owner. I love it. His name's Jeff. He was in our program. He was in one of our masterminds for a while, and he always used to joke around about hiring. He said, yeah, when I'm sitting down in job interviews with potential candidates, I hold up their resume. I hold it up like this, and I point at it, and I say, I want this person. This is the person that I want. Where's this person? Because we know we all embellish. So yeah, the liability, that's always a bummer. It's just a difficult part of the profession. It's a blessing and it's difficult. It's a blessing because, look, let's face it, who wants buildings falling down? It's nice that we have protection so that we know the buildings we go into aren't going to collapse. There's safety stuff that's in place. But ultimately, architects, they do bear the brunt of that responsibility. And hopefully they're carrying enough insurance to take care of any mishaps. But ideally, mishaps happen and you do the best you can. But the biggest mistake you could make is hiring underqualified people. So then you start missing stuff on the drawings. You make careless mistakes, and then it's disaster ensues. It's not fun.
Yeah. Do you listen to any Dan Martell's stuff of Buy Back Your Time?
I used to follow him way back in the day, but I haven't. Tell me, what's Dan Martell talking about nowadays?
He's on the other side of this conversation, and I go back and forth of, did you hire the project manager that's qualified and that you can hand stuff over to and they're going to take care of it? It's going to come back, but at a premium level. Or do you look at all the things that you're doing as a business owner, as an architect, and you say, what is the thing that's taking up the most of my time? Is it admin? Is it bookkeeping that is not the highest use of my time? And hire out those pieces that are maybe lower level administrative cost or even architecture cost, drafting, rendering. You begin to sectionize that and have multiple people that are good at one thing that you can train up or that are less costly, and you build a team up. And obviously that probably changes over time of where your firm is. But what's your thought on that? I'm a mid-size architecture firm. Do I go and hire the qualified, good project manager that's 6 figures, or do I hire 3 or 4 that can take over some of this administrative task things that I'm doing that's taking up not my highest and best use of time? Where would you lean?
I would say both, Zeke. I would say both, right? Because hiring someone who's highly qualified. Now, here's the key with this. Not everyone who commands a high salary is going to be top caliber material, and not everyone who is wanting a high salary is necessarily qualified. So I have heard many reports of people, they went for that supposedly highly qualified person, but they didn't know how to vet them. They didn't know how to test to make sure they were really the real deal. They were really the person who they saw on the resume. They didn't know how to tell that. They didn't know how to tell that before they hired the person. They ended up getting burned because, for instance, another story, right? So we had a firm owner. These are not stupid people, for starters, right? Typically architects, shoot, if you just look at the IQ of a lot of architects, they're academic, right? So we're not talking about idiots here. We're talking about smart people. They've been through college. They've typically had graduate degrees. They're not stupid people, right? And yet we make these mistakes. So as I was mentioning, there's one architect who he had the business development role that he wanted to bring in someone to take care of that role. So he hired someone who talked a good talk, said he was great at business development. And then it was a slow, painful death of 18 months, discovering that this guy was not bringing in any work. He just wanted to sit around, call people, and have coffee dates, but he didn't close any projects. He was a six-figure plus salary, right? And it was a terrible experience for the firm owner. So I do want to qualify that. When I say go out there and hire the most experienced person, you need to be able to recognize who's a fit for the role. And this is a huge mistake that a lot of people make because they don't understand how to identify who the fit is for the role. So going back to your question, absolutely stack your business full of highly capable, highly qualified people. But if you can imagine like a tree that's bearing fruit, like we have a lot of orchards around here in the Central Valley. And like one of the ways like for nuts, for instance, the way they harvest the nuts is they just shake the tree. And then all the nuts that are ready to fall off, they just fall off, right? So if you think about that, think about all the things you as a firm owner are doing. We want to shake you a little bit. So all that admin stuff that you shouldn't be doing falls off and it goes down to someone else who has a lower pay grade. Same thing for your project manager, right? So everyone in the office is actually really spending most of their time doing their highest and best use and then delegating everything else. So I think you need both. I don't think it's either or. I don't think it's hire the highly qualified people or just hire the admin help. You got to do both of them. Your project manager shouldn't be filling in spreadsheets. You should have a person who is at the pay grade of someone who fills in spreadsheets and who enjoys it, filling those spreadsheets, and the project manager is just looking at a report every single week and making the critical decisions about where to allocate resources and what needs to shift and zig and zag to be able to keep things on task.
So who comes first, the chicken or the egg here? The admin, the project manager, the business partner?
Yeah, it's a case-by-case basis, as Zeke. Typically, what I recommend for 90% of solo practitioners, when they're making that first critical jump to like actually getting some help, usually the first hire is always going to be an admin person, like a part-time VA or something like that is always going to be the first admin. Then after that, you want to get someone who's qualified to actually do drawings as soon as possible. So if I was starting out an architectural practice tomorrow, the first thing I would do is I would go out and I would find a qualified and competent architect who could produce drawings A to Z and actually loved doing that. And I would hire them.
Yeah. I'm interested. We haven't chatted much post COVID here, and we've had a remote team for a while. Who's winning out there right now? Are you seeing remote teams or in-house architects looking over the younger architects' desks? What model do you see that's really thriving? Curious.
Yeah. The home team has always had the advantage, which is it's the old school. People are coming to the office where you can look over the shoulder. Mentorship happens. That's very entrenched for number one, and it's very successful number two when done right. So it's hard to dislodge that. But what I've seen is I have seen these outsourced teams, like you mentioned, you have an outsourced team. They're nipping at the heels. Like they are, like in the past, I would say that an office where people came in and there was hands-on mentorship and there was collaboration, if that office was operating at the highest level it could possibly operate, and you compared that with an outsourcing team that was operating at the highest level it could operate, typically the in-person is always going to win out just because there's that X factor, there's that human element. But I'd say that gap is decreasing, Zeke. I've seen it. It sounds like from your experience, it sounds like you're happy with having an outsourced team. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying the tools for outsourcing getting better, the tools for collaboration are getting better. People are learning better how to work remotely, how to work around schedules, and starting to take advantage of some of the things like people being in different parts of the world. So these people can be working when these people are sleeping. It's a very valid, before it seemed to be cutting edge, which is, it was like only the outliers who were like starting to do outsourcing. I think that's starting to tip now where people are starting to be like, man, if you don't have at least some outsourced people on your team, you're missing out big time.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like the hands-on working with younger architects. These conversations, like now you can, in an office, you're oftentimes just doing that as well. Like you're hopping on a quick Teams call and chatting and looking at drawings almost as efficient. So we looked at one of the reasons I was telling you before we were getting started here is the Red Hotel. We were looking at strongly at putting our architecture office at the base of this project. It actually started out as a architecture office, and let's do some Airbnbs up above to pay for the architecture office. Escalated to a boutique hotel as it is. And I found most of what I need is a good place to meet with clients, good place to show up and show off some of our work. And we ended up pulling the architecture office out over the last year. We built out a home studio to do the podcasting. And the more I think about it, it's just been like, man, do I want to go back into that and hovering over employees? And do my employees want that? And the answer was, for us at least, was no. And so that's what we've decided. That's what we're charging forward with. And we are, focused on just building the best, not just outsourced team, but integrated team. Like we do daily huddles. We follow the Rockefeller methods and really are looking at how do we continue to give our team places to grow. So it's a learning practice, but I only know what I know. So it's interesting to hear what other people are doing, what's working, what's not.
You mentioned you follow the Rockefeller method. And this is so critical that if you have an outsourced team, it's going to be that much more important to make sure your systems are on point, to make sure your communication is on point, because people start to lose the relationship aspect very quickly. I know if I don't talk with one of my team members in a week, I can feel that we've lost a little bit of social capital. Right? Yeah. So there's definitely something to say for like being in constant contact. That's a huge part of outsourced team. That's one thing that I've seen. Zeke, you were mentioning earlier at the beginning of this episode, you were like, yeah, you mentioned having to learn how to get clients and how to bring people in the door. I was wondering, could you share with us some lessons? I'm going to turn the question around here. Could you share with us some lessons of what you learned about bringing clients in the door?
So I think for architects, like our natural inclination is to not be salesy. That's considered a bad word, but reality is you're not going to have a business very long if you're not able to do so. One, taking that out and doing out of a bad word and learning how to do that well. And education and really just talking about the things that are important to our clients, I found to be like the most important scale. And so early on, one of the things we pulled from Architecture Marketing Academy was just doing like this newsletter that we'd write up, here's what we're doing, and send it out. That has progressed into more what we're doing now is setting rhythms to go to our project sites and highlight the real heroes of the story, which are our clients. And so once a month, we designate an afternoon shoot date, and we'll try to go to many active projects as we can and have as many client conversations as we can. And that does a couple of things. So one, while we're out at the job sites, we're talking about what's the waterproofing doing? What are the struggles that you're seeing on the job? What are the things that you would do different? Not, hey, client, tell us how great root architecture is. Like, we're having real conversations. What are your struggles to create real projects, and what are the things that you're seeing that could do and improve? And so that allows us to create some educational content to put out there for other people that are interested in doing that type of work. And so we're helping to pull the curtain back, reveal a little bit what's going on, give some education. And then two, this last year we started podcasting. And so as another layer of just going to job sites, this is having the deep one-on-one conversations with architects, developers, hospitality, which is our niche, and what are the things that they're struggling with. And that does a couple of things. One, we're connecting with experts in the industry. We're already having conversations with our hotels, sharing our struggles. Other people can learn from that. Two, it connects us with potential clients. So we're having conversation with hopefully people we're going to be doing work with. And it's really flipped from making blanket sales calls to how do we become more deeply ingrained and educated and share what we're doing with public. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but to me, that's been the most important thing of learning to build a practice is you can't just wear the one practitioner hat of I'm going to draw and the client that I did the last project is going to refer me to the next one. You really have to be willing to put yourself out there, engage with the community, figure out what's new and going on.
Yeah, you dropped some solid gold there, Zeke, and I really hope that our listeners can pick up on that, because what you said in one simple sentence sounds easy, but like doing it can take a lifetime. And you said, I learn to speak my client's language. I learn to talk about their issues, their problems, their challenges. I put myself in their world, and it's, you know how to do it. It comes naturally because you spend a lot of time doing that. But what I find is sometimes a lot of architects, they think they know how to do that, but they don't. And that's the word place to be in, because when you have a blind spot, when you think you're good at something, but you're really not, that's the most dangerous place to be in, because then you're going around. It's like you're going around at the party with the spinach on your teeth and no one can see it except for you can't see it, but everyone else can.
Yeah. And so for us, that looks like a little bit of putting on some of our clients' hats and understanding what they're going through. So the reason why we continue to push into development is we understand some of the real life pains that they're going through, how to solve some of those problems. A portion of our business is always going to be dedicated to that. It also fills in gaps. So if I have, a full staff member, I can always have one project I'm, filling in that I can use my staff members on. And then it's our own little experiment pool over here to find out what works and doesn't work. Back to business of architecture. I'd love to, from your side, I know you do the same. You're helping teach architects, but you've done practice and been in the world. I'm interested in the business of architecture. What does that look like behind the scenes as you're growing up a team? Back to this kind of remote versus local. What are the things that your team is looking at, and how are you using that to practice what you preach?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. It's fun what we do. From the outside, I know some people may look at consulting businesses like ours and think, oh, it's easy. They're just consulting, right? But there's a lot more that goes into it, because here's the thing. People today, like we're brokers of information, but not just information. What we help people do is we help them embed the information, apply it so that it sticks. That's the key. Because today, anyone could go online. You could go watch some YouTube videos about how to run an architectural practice. Shoot, we have tons of free PDFs and tons of free tools that we give out, the same things we use with our clients. You could like hodgepodge together the smart practice method on your own just by following our podcast and downloading free resources and stuff like that. But what you won't get is you won't get one-on-one mentorship. You won't get people giving you feedback about how you're approaching your conversations with your clients or your team members, right? So what's lacking is that ability to embed. So I'm very proud of the ability, and like we've fine-honed like a very good process for helping our clients get embedded transformation into them. So they pick up the skills of being a successful business person that they can layer and use as a foundation for being a good architect. So that's what we do behind the scenes, is like we really see ourselves as people that understand psychology. We understand human psychology. We understand the difference between coaching. We understand the difference between training. We understand the difference between consulting. All these things are different, right? So when you hire a company like ours, ideally, they understand how to coach and when that's necessary. They understand how to consult and when that's necessary. Coaching is, Zeke, you have the answers within you. I'm your coach. I'm helping you find the answers that are already within you. And I'm helping you believe in your own answers. That's like what a coach does for us. They may tweak us a little bit, adjust us here and there, but it's more like, man, the answer's in you. We're going to help you find it, help you get certainty about what you know you actually want, put you in that direction. Consulting, on the other hand, is different, right? So consulting is literally giving you a solution and saying, hey, here's the solution that you should implement based upon our experience. And then we look at something like training. Training is completely different as well. Training is, okay, here's something that you need to do. Here's a habit you need to have. And what we're going to do, we're going to reinforce this. We're going to embed it. We're going to add accountability. So all these things are different. And the beautiful thing is, like, all these things that we teach our clients to do, it's the same thing that we do here internally as a team, right? So I have to learn how to delegate to my team, right? Right now we have 7 full-time team members around the world with different areas of expertise. Like I said, everything from finances. We got a full-time CPA on our team. So someone who is an expert in the spreadsheets and the finances, the numbers, the profitability, how that works together. We have someone with a background in sales that worked in the construction and engineering industries for over 20 years. He's really a pro at helping people represent their value. And all these people earn a lot more money than I ever earned as an architect. So what that means is that I'm paying them very highly. They're highly compensated. They're well compensated. And so being able to delegate something, letting someone else do it, compensate them highly for what they're doing, for their skill and their expertise, so they actually stay, they get involved in the mission. That's what's going on behind the scenes here at Business of Architecture. We're having a blast. We have an amazing team. All of our team members are A players. Like, they're the kind of guys and ladies, if something's going down in the world, these are the people you want to have on your back. We don't have one single person who's complaining, who's upset with their job. Everyone here at BOA loves what they do. They're excited to be here, and they're moving forward the mission of what we do here at Business of Architecture, which is ultimately eradicating architectural poverty and helping architects become free.
Yeah, love that. So if I heard the business model behind that, are you focused on, it sounds like building A-player teams in remote locations, or do you guys do the in-office thing as well?
That's a good way to describe our business model. Yeah, we are, it's A-player remote teams. That's how we operate.
Yep.
In terms of our service offerings, we do take advantage of, we like live events. So we like hosting like in-person workshops and seminars, and we couple that with all the online interactions that we do. So that's behind the scenes. And we follow the smart practice method ourselves. So we have our own version of what you talked about. You have the Rockefeller method. There's EOS. There's different business frameworks out there. Smart practice method is one of those frameworks specifically for architectural practices. And we follow that as well for our team and for our business. So we know it works, right? And so that's why we can fully understand it and help architects implement it in their business.
Same with an architecture firm. Whoever the head of the practice or starting can often become the linchpin, whether it's amount of things that you can do, the liability, the coaching expert like yourself, and everybody wants a piece of Enoch's time. How are you getting past that linchpin and making your business more scalable with the framework that you guys are implementing?
Yeah, man, easier said than done. Easier said than done. And here's why. Psychologists tell us that most of our daily activities, and thus most of our results are determined by our non-conscious programming. Okay, so our non-conscious programming. So to give our listeners an example of what I mean by that, let's say that I'll give you an example, right? So my wife and I, we were camping in the Mojave Desert here over the past weekend. And on the way there, my wife, she's sitting in the silence of the car, and bless her heart, she's okay, I want to connect with Enoch. And so she pulled up this little, like one of those little trivia games. We can ask questions, find it more out about each other. What animal would you be or whatever, something similar to that. Yeah. And she did it purely for the purpose of engaging with me and getting that conversation and connection happening. As she was doing this, I wasn't responding the way she wanted. I wasn't saying the right things. I was joking around and stuff. And so ultimately she got frustrated with me. She put down her phone and said, fine, if you're not going to participate, then I'm just going to go back to read my book. So she puts her phone down and she like pulls out her book. And I'm feeling hurt because I'm like, damn it, woman, what did I do wrong? You don't want to play. I do want to connect with you. I want to play the game. And so what happened, I've done enough marriage therapy to recognize that what happened here is that there were triggers involved in both sides. So my wife, first of all, she got triggered. What does that mean? It means she had some sort of negative emotion in her body, some frustration, some annoyance with how I was behaving. Now, I got triggered at her as well. The problem is that as leaders, we go through our business. Most of the time, we're not aware of the triggers that are happening for us. In other words, these negative feelings and emotions we have. And so what ends up happening is that we are ruled by these unconscious kind of programming that we have from the past, these negative feelings and emotions. And so to give you an example, Zeke, how this could play out in an architectural practice, an architect might feel very uncomfortable delegating a certain task. And even though this task needs to be delegated, right? And because this architect is not necessarily aware of the uncomfortableness that's happening in this architect's body, the architect then is just operating on autopilot, saying, I'll just do this. It's going to take me less time. I'll just do it myself, blah, 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 blah. And then staying trapped as what you call the linchpin in the office. Now, that's a long way of saying that delegating is very easy to say, but what we find is it's hard to do. Because I find we have architects who are very successful. They have teams of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 team members, and they're still struggling to delegate a lot of things they should be delegating. And they are still dealing with blind spots where they're doing things that they should not be doing, but they're doing it out of habit and out of past programming. The key for me, Zeke, to be able to and what we teach our clients to not be the linchpin anymore, is you have to start become aware of your own subconscious programming. Where am I self-sabotaging? Where am I getting in the way? Where I responding out of fear as opposed to being a powerful leader who maturely knows how to coach, train, and when to do each one of those, and how to make sure that the company operates better without me. The second part of that, Zeke, is that it's very real that we will, if you're a human being, you're going to feel a little bit of threat if you get outshone by one of your team members. It's not uncommon. If there's a small select portion of humanity that will be completely fine having team members who outshine them, But most human beings are going to feel, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're going to feel a little bit of threat by a team member who's outshining them, who's doing something better, who comes up with the right answer. And so that's another area in which we can subconsciously diminish our team members. And you and I,
Mm,
we've probably been on teams like that, where someone was really, that was a big thing for them, where they actually cut down people in front of other people. They pointed out mistakes publicly. They did all sorts of things to belittle people around them. But we all have a little bit of that. So that's another thing to be aware of. See, because am I feeling threatened by having smarter people around me? Do I need to be the person in the room that has the answer? Or can I celebrate other people for having the answer? You
yeah.
mentioned Art Gensler earlier. You talked about
Hmm.
Gensler, Jason Gensler, right? And in my interactions I've had with him, and I know he's passed away now, but he really came across as the kind of person who that came more naturally. He wasn't threatened by having smart people around him. He had that kind of servant leadership persona. And look at what happened. It was just that seed of letting his own ego take a back seat to let other people shine. That's why they call it I think, a constellation of stars. They actually have it as part of their core principles in their company, is not built around like one powerful figure like Frank Gehry, but we want a
Hmm.
constellation of stars. It means we want to have a lot of stars in our organization, and they don't outshine each other, but they all contribute together. So it's just different ways of approaching business, but it can be challenging if you're wanting to have all the. Here's a way another one of my mentors said it. He says, "Don't go to work to get your needs met." This
Mm,
is, if we had to summarize it, that would be probably the key piece of advice there. Don't go to
yeah.
work to get your emotional needs met. Get your emotional needs met at home. When
That's
you're
right.
in business,
Yeah.
you're not there to get your needs met. You're there to meet other people's needs.
That's right. Yeah. Showing up. Oh, yeah, I love, yeah, you mentioned Gensler and one of your mentors here. You're often helping a mentor for a lot of architects. Who are you learning from these days, or what are you reading these days that's having an influence on you?
Oh man, right now the mentors who I'm listening to, let me see, on the business side, can't say I'm really focused on any business mentors right now. What I'm really focused on is more what people might call the spiritual side of life.
Mm,
And I hate labeling it that way because I don't think there's any difference between spirituality and secularism. I think they're both the same. I'm like reading and listening to dead Indian gurus who are like enlightened individuals. I'm like deeply studying Buddhist principles and
yeah,
practices. So that's my journey right now. It's
yeah,
like
that's cool.
really, and not just learning about those people, but looking for those same experiences for myself, because I found that's like a shortcut to, if I get the inside right, let's put it this way. If I get the inside, if I can focus on me on the inside, then everything else on the outside of me lines up. It's very frustrating to live life thinking that other people around us or other situations around us are responsible for our struggles, for our stress, for our unhappiness, for our frustration.
Hmm.
Once we start to understand that, no, all the answers are here within me. And if I do my own internal work, then everything else doesn't even matter. It's going to fall into place. So that's the kind of stuff I'm doing
Yeah,
now. It's like far out there, existential,
love
nature of
it.
reality, existence kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's Hal Elrod that says your outside world will reflect your inside world. And it really is. You got to do that work on the inside. It is so strange how sometimes you will push and push on trying to change everything, your team members happening out here. And until you begin to take that time to really look inside, like it's surprising exponentially, magically. Like the things start to happen out here that become less of an issue and solve themselves when you've taken the time to do it internally. Did I see you started another podcast on this kind of subject?
Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
I've had a couple false starts, like starting other podcasts and stuff. The podcast that I did start, that I haven't been consistent with it, but I'm excited about the topic. We'll see where it goes. It's called Atonement: The Path of Wholeness. And atonement can be like a kind of religiously charged word. And I use that word because it's going to be familiar to Judeo-Christian context. But ultimately, what that word really means is that word means integrating or bringing together all of who we are into like a full package that's devoid of shame and guilt, right? So really
Mm.
being like a fully embodied human being. And that's what that podcast is about. It's about being able to take the parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of, or that we think are too much, or that might scare other people, and actually bringing those things to the table, integrating them into our consciousness so we can be the best and fullest version of ourselves. So that's that podcast. It's called
Cool.
Atonement. You can look it up on all your
Yeah.
favorite podcast
Are you doing that as a
sources.
solo shows, or are you bringing in gurus and
Yeah, it'll be
guys in there?
interview. Like I really struggle doing just like talking. I don't really like just sitting there and being like the talking head. I find it a lot easier to engage like this in a conversation. It's funner, more fun, and I just enjoy that more. So that'll be the format. It's a lot easier.
Yeah. Who are some of the guys that you're interviewing on that you're excited about?
Oh man, I haven't even reached out to interview anyone at the time. Like I grew up Mormon, Zeke, and that's still the religions that I identify with. So a lot of the people I might invite are like within that context of
Yeah.
people from that religious persuasion, but I haven't reached out to any yet. A lot of them are people who deal with things like guilt and shame, mental health, sexuality, like all these things that are just so important, like on the inside that you mentioned, to be able to like be more fulfilled and happy. Because we can, let's face it, we can have the most profitable architecture business, we can have the best clients, and we can still be completely miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
inside.
a successful life, you keep pushing. If you haven't figured out the inside, then what's the point? At the end of the
Exactly.
day, so.
And is there anything else other than the inside?
Yeah. Cool, man. I'm glad you're leaning into that and continuing your adventures and growth. What else is new on your business of architecture or work or life that we missed?
Well, we're going to get back into in the distance. We have a live event happening. I know you attended one of our live events we did with the AMI.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
So we're going to do like a larger in-person event. That's cool. Another thing we're looking at doing is we're looking at
Is that
building
open
out
to anybody or?
Yeah, it'll be open to
or is that
anybody,
AMI
clients as
members
well as
only?
non-clients. Yeah, open to
Okay. Where are
anybody.
you going to be doing that at?
It'll be like San Diego area.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, which is my favorite place to hang out and do conferences. So there's that. We're looking at building out or creating a little event center. So that's something that we're looking into.
Your own event center?
Yeah, like our own event center.
Heck yeah. Right? Let's go.
Yeah, that we can. Yeah, that's right. We can hold retreats there, and other people can hold retreats and stuff like that. That's one thing we're looking at.
In San Diego area? Or where are you guys doing that at?
Yeah. Well, we're looking at San Diego. We're also looking Costa Rica is something that we're looking into as well. And I was actually excited to talk to you about on this podcast because it is like a hospitality project that we have envisioned. It's like a retreat center with like healing modalities with like residences involved and stuff like that. So
have you talked to our mutual friend Roderick down there about this?
Oh yeah, no, I haven't. Not yet. I haven't talked to him about it. We actually have another friend who is connected with my business partner, Ryan Willard. They went to school back in, I think they worked together at a firm. Maybe it was Rogers back in the UK. He's another Costa Rican architect who does great work, just like Roderick does. And I reached out to him and he gave us a lowdown. What I'm finding about Costa Rica is the flights getting there seem to be a pain in the butt. Meaning there's not a whole lot of, there are direct flights, but like a lot of the flights that we looked at, like the direct flights, I don't know, I was just looking at the logistics of what it would take to run a center down there, and you start to see the obstacles and everything. So like your project, it sounded like you had a vision, and then it sounds like over time that vision changed. You modified, you ran the pro forma, and instead of becoming Airbnbs on top with an architecture practice on the bottom, it became a multi-use project with 20-something units in it, and then I think you said there's like a commercial space on the cafe on the bottom. Right. Yeah. So I have no idea what I'm doing in terms of development, proceeding cautiously with an open mind and just seeing what unfolds there. Me and Ryan will probably be going down to Costa Rica at the end of the year to scout out some properties. And
okay. Do you have a city or location that you're looking at?
I don't want to
reveal. We'll talk about it after the podcast.
Yeah, there we go.
We're planning a trip down there too, end of August.
Oh yeah. Nice. Okay. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Lots of exciting stuff. Enoch, man, always appreciate connecting with you. Appreciate all the value you've given to our firm and life. And I know so many others out there always acting in a way of just giving. Appreciate that. Glad to see where your new podcast is going with kind of the soul journeys, all good stuff. If people want to get in contact with you, Enoch, what's the best way for them to connect up with you?
Yeah. So number one, if you're into all that spiritual existential stuff, just go to enochsears.com. I don't talk about a lot of architecture there. If you're more like, I don't care about that, I don't want you proselyting to me or anything like that, then head over to Business of Architecture. The only thing we talk about there is making lots of money and becoming absolutely free and living your vision. So it's businessofarchitecture.com.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, Zeke.